These models are going to get better. They're going to do more amazing things. It's an exciting time for us to be in. But as these models get generally better, this problem of like, all right, well, when it fails, knowing how it fails and doing everything we can to like inform the user and protect against it is going to become even bigger because we're going to start trusting these things more.
How did the best machine learning practitioners get involved in the field? What challenges have they faced? What has helped them flourish? Let's ask them. Welcome to Learning from Machine Learning. I'm your host, Seth Levine. Hello and welcome to Learning from Machine Learning. On this episode, we have a very special guest, Chris Van Pelt, the co-founder of Weights and Biases, the co-founder of CrowdFlower and Figure 8, and somebody who's dedicated his career optimizing ML workflows and teaching ML practitioners, making machine learning more accessible to all. Chris, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't you start us off with what attracted you to machine learning?
Yeah, this was quite a while ago, but I remember all the way back in college studying computer science in the early 2000s, talking about machine learning. But in my college years, it wasn't something that I immersed myself that deeply into. It wasn't until a little later, kind of early in my career, I moved to the Bay Area in 2006 to work at a startup called PowerSet. And PowerSet was a startup that it was ahead of its time. And that was where I first got immersed in the world of machine learning. So at PowerSet, we were oddly enough doing like a lot of like natural language processing, which is a hot topic these days. But we were using a very different approach, a rules-based kind of heuristic approach to language modeling. And we had licensed technology from Xerox PARC and brought on a lot of these very learned professionals, PhDs in the field, tackling very hard problems around language understanding and how we could apply that to search and make a better search product. It was at that company I also met Lucas Biewald, who I've now founded 2 companies with, and that is what kind of really launched my career in AI and ML. My co-founder Lucas actually studied machine learning and had been working with models kind of throughout college and in his career, and I'm the like full stack web developer that kind of landed in this hot and exciting space that has had the blessing of being able to create tools for who I consider some of the most impactful and interesting engineers out there, kind of building the next generation of products and solutions on top of this stuff. So exciting times for sure. I'm glad I landed at that startup in the early 2000s.
Awesome. How would you say that your background as a full stack engineer sort of prepared you for the machine learning world?
Well, I mean, I think the core thing, what I consider to be like most important when you're an engineer building products, is thinking about the end user experience. Like how is the world going to interact with this thing? And I think the same is true and often a lot trickier with machine learning models. Like the second you introduce one of these models, you suddenly have this thing that's like right some percentage of the time. And like by design, it's going to be like wrong. So thinking about how end users are going to experience that, or ways in which you could potentially make the end user experience better when they need to get involved and kind of handle those cases where the model is wrong, I think has made me hopefully a better engineer and developer when it comes to actually bringing these machine learning models into the real world.
Nice. Yeah, as a machine learning practitioner, I get to use my favorite quote like once a week. All models are wrong, some are useful. George Box, he was a statistician. I don't know if he was necessarily talking about machine learning, but it's still a fun one to get to say. I'm glad I got to just say it also. So zooming forward a little bit to weights and biases, which is just an absolutely incredible tool. I've been using it for a better part of like 5 years for every part of my machine learning life cycle for my projects. I use it for a bunch of personal projects. I'm now using it in industry. Why don't you tell us in your own words, as a co-founder, what is weights and biases?
Yeah, you bet. So our mission at Weights and Biases is to build the world's best developer tools for machine learning engineers. So we're really interested in building really good tools. I've always been a fan of tools. Like, to have a good tool, to have the right tool for the job, like in the real world, there's nothing better. Even I don't do a lot of handiwork, but like going to Home Depot and looking at the different actual tools is quite exhilarating for me. I've always enjoyed that. So Weights and Biases is building tools for machine learning engineers. So the kinds of tools that a machine learning engineer needs, it was pretty obvious in the early days. As we've grown, it's become more nuanced. There's like little pockets of the problem space that we're always kind of going, hey, is there a better way to do this? How can we create a better tool? Classic problems are like, well, you need to keep track of what data you're training on, right? It's always, when you're modeling, the data is king. So we created a number of tools to just have a solid understanding of data lineage, data versioning, being able to dive in and visualize, understand the data. And then there's a lot of experimentation in machine learning. So when you're training a machine learning model, it's not just the source code. As a traditional software developer, it's like, all right, I got GitHub. I know like what the truth is, and I have CI/CD running. It's going to be the data, and it's going to be some hyperparameters, some like command line arguments that you passed into the program that you're running, and then ultimately the weights and the biases that you're creating when you've trained a model. So Weights and Biases is a end-to-end MLOps platform that helps engineers keep track of all of these things and then can serve as a system of record for their day-to-day development and understanding of how these models are performing and how they can make them perform better.
Very cool. Yeah, the amazing thing for me is I've gotten to see how Weights and Biases has expanded over time, and my usage of it also. I started out using it really just to like keep track of things, keep track of experiment results. I think seeing loss curves was very illuminating for me. I guess I had seen it in Fast AI, but there was something about seeing multiple runs all in one place, which was really nice. Toying around with sweeps and creating reports, all of it. Tables is incredible. Haven't gotten into Weave yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And ML prompts also, which is really nice. And speaking of, nothing better than a good tool, right? I mean, the right tool for the job. It's amazing how seamless it can be, and also when you don't have the right tool, how frustrating it can be when you're trying to, do something. Like, don't try to hammer in something, you get a hammer, right? From your perspective, how have the goals of Weights and Biases changed since the onset?
Yeah, in the beginning, right, this is like 2016. This was a time I'm sure much of your audience could remember, or maybe they were in the space at this point. But TensorFlow was really the main player in the framework space. PyTorch really wasn't a thing. Computer vision was the use case that everyone was talking about and excited about. This was a time when self-driving cars was the primary topic around like AI or applying ML. The core problem that we set out to solve in the early days was just like keeping track of your experiments. So state of the art at that time for just keeping track of your modeling effort was like a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet. So
right.
That was like a pretty low bar. And we just set out to make a tool that was like really easy to keep track of the experiments that you're doing. Like originally in the very beginning, we didn't think putting a whole bunch of charts into the product was necessarily needed. Like the main problem we were solving was just like keep track of of the actual experiments than maybe what the final loss value was or the final like accuracy value was. And then as we added more rich visualization features, we saw users love it. So we really doubled down there. The ways in which we've expanded was, we finally we convinced ourselves we had product market fit, that we had created something that was useful when we got, teams like OpenAI to actually use the product for work that they were doing, or Toyota Research Institute on a lot of the robotics and autonomous vehicle work. So then it became like, all right, well, what other problems are there? And this was literally just going out and talking to our customers or users and hearing where their pain points were. So the sweeps offering inside of Weights and Biases, where we make it like really easy to run a hyperparameter search. Initially, that wasn't obvious. It was kind of like, well, there's like good tools on the market that do that. We don't think we're going to magically come out and have the greatest hyperparameter algorithm that's going to save everybody money. It was just like, let's just make it as easy and as pleasant as possible to run a hyperparameter search. Since features like our model registry reports was, an interesting set of features that came out of the reality of like, all right, well, everyone's report or like the end result is like very different. The kinds of things you want to understand and know about when you're doing computer vision, very different than if you're making like a financial prediction model or some arbitrary classifier. So we built this like very flexible platform to actually communicate these graphs and charts and results around to customers. And the product continues to evolve. I think most recently the move from when we started and for the past like 5 years was always like, okay, you build a model, like maybe you take like ResNet or some existing base model, but you're going to like fine tune it and you're going to do all of this stuff in house. Now it's often, we'll just call out to like OpenAI's API or some other API, and the kinds of problems and things you need to be concerned about are different, but they're similar in a lot of ways as well, right? These are all machine systems that have this probabilistic nature that are going to be wrong. How do we evaluate and how do we try to make the user experience as good as possible across it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a certain flexibility that's really nice with Weights and Biases, that you can kind of use it for many different use cases. Speaking of like, creating tools, and sometimes you have the intended use for tools, what's like a really unique use of Weights and Biases that I guess when you were creating it, you never really thought that it would be used for it?
The Weights and Biases platform itself it's pretty versatile in terms of the core. As you're building a product, you're like, all right, well, what are the atoms of this thing? And gosh, I remember we built this feature a few years ago where we let people completely define their own visualization. So we built it on top of Vega, which there's like Altair is the Python framework that works with this visualization framework. Under the hood, it's all like D3, which is a very cool technology. But we wired up Vega such that users could define their own custom visualizations, and they could wire that up to any of the atoms in the Weights and Biases API, kind of these units of data. And one of our engineers actually wired things up and defined a custom visualization that was actually like a role-playing game, which I thought was awesome. A complete misuse of both the core Vega spec and the underlying data model, but a very cool demo nonetheless. I think, in the actual use cases of Weights and Biases, I've been able to see some like very cool use cases of machine learning over the years. One of my favorite examples is technology around agriculture. So putting like computer vision models onto big tractors and combines and reducing the amount of pesticides or chemicals that need to be applied to control weeds in a field. Has a massive impact on the environment. It's really cool tech. Like I went and saw one of the tractors, and they have like little NVIDIA boxes like on the combine doing it. and also not one, it's not the first place your mind goes where you're like, how could we use AI or ML to make some impact in the world? But the work we've done with John Deere and Blue River around that has been really cool to see.
Very cool. In terms of all of the things that have been accomplished from Weights and Biases, I'm sure that you guys have a nice roadmap ahead. What are some of the things that you're most excited about for the future for Weights and Biases?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting thing is this next generation of tooling for really the next generation of AI and ML engineers. What's happened in the last year and a half with the explosion of ChatGPT and now every data science conference you go to is definitely going to have the words like LLM or Gen AI somewhere on a poster. It's been just wild to see the whole industry shift to this excitement around these large models. The team is working on, all right, well, what does a product look like where you're not necessarily doing a lot of modeling in-house, you're leveraging these tools, doing more prompt engineering, doing more like the retrieval augmented generation space, kind of hooking these tools together, and with kind of agents and these more general purpose uses of LLMs, like what would the world's best tooling look like for that new world? That's what the team's been working on over the last year, and we're excited to finally release that in the next couple of months here, and continue to iterate on it. As we found with our existing product, it's like, we make a swing, we try to make something as good as we think it can be, and then through actually having people use it and solve problems, we can iterate and make it great and delightful. So that's really the area we're focusing a lot on. I think, one of the big shifts there is that from the start of the company, we're selling a product to machine learning engineers. These are people that understand the underlying math. They understand, probabilities and kind of what that means from a operational standpoint. In this new world, we have a lot of just traditional software developers that are now consuming these APIs and building products on top of them. So one of the challenges is like, how do we convey these core ideas to this new audience in a way that enables them to kind of build better products without a lot of there's a lot of it's tricky, right? There's going to potentially be bias. You need to really think carefully about, okay, when this thing fails, how's it going to fail? You want to fail in a way that's least disruptive to the end user.
Right.
So being able to build tools for that space, it's really exciting. And there's hundreds of other companies doing the same thing. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we need to move quickly. But it's an exciting space to be in. Yeah,
that's definitely one of the most challenging things with machine learning versus, say, traditional programming. If it doesn't work for traditional programming, you just get an error, right? I mean, usually, most of the time, unless it's something really weird. But machine learning, you'll get an answer, but it won't be right. And with an API call, and you will generate text, you will generate some image, but will it be useful for what you're actually trying to do? And understanding sort of the responsibility that people have when they're creating things like that, it's a real transition.
And it's tempting. You can make a cool demo today.
Yes.
It's been so fun as an engineer having access to this technology and to delight myself when I make something and I'm like, whoa, it did that. I can't believe it did it.
Right.
But that demo where you then kind of script it and you're showing your friends this cool thing you made, it does not account for all of the weird edge cases and things you haven't thought about and ways in which another user is going to interact with this thing. And if you just throw that out there, you're not even going to know really if it's working or not. The closest proxy you'll have is are people sharing it and more people using it? But even thinking about, all right, well, how do I get user feedback? This goes back to that first job I had here in the Valley getting into machine learning. Like when it's a search engine, how do you know if your like machine learning algorithm that return results is any good? Well,
Right.
a good proxy is like, are people clicking on the results? But it's a subtle, gnarly problem, and you need to really think about it and have rigorous ways to evaluate and understand if you're getting better or worse, because you're going to have to change the prompt, you're going to upgrade the model, you're going to change things about your product, and you need a way to actually measure, is this thing good or bad, without just sending it out to your users and making them kind of yell, hey, what the heck, this sucks.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of the ability to create demos, I'm not sure if it's oversaid or anything, but something I've been finding myself saying, it's easy to create a demo. It's hard to create something for production, and it's even harder to create something at scale, right? Something can work a dozen times, but is it going to work 1,000 times? How's it going to, or 1,000,000 times? How's it going to work when there's multiple users at the same time? How's it going to work on all of these edge cases? And I think that what we're seeing is that, especially with this generative AI, you can't even test all of these things. You can't even fully check it for like prompt injection, let's say, right? Because until it's out there and people are starting to use it for all these unintended uses, that's when you start to see all these crazy things come out. But it's already kind of too late, right? Because it's in production. Someone is using it. They have, it's already exposed. It's already out. I mean, we're seeing lots of things like that happen where people are putting out generative chatbots for their customer service, and it's just like, that's a terrible idea to do that fully, to just be fully relying on that. And there's obviously other examples too. But yeah, speaking of evaluation, it's really hard. How do you know if your product is working correctly? So yeah, something like search, it's very difficult, right? You might want, like, you could quickly get results, but are they the right results? Recommendation engines, right? You can quickly get results, but are they the right results? I think evaluation will always remain a problem, especially because I think people put too much weight on benchmarks as well. I don't know what your feeling is on that. You think
The
about
benchmarks
that
are very generic, right? So then, someone will make an announcement and say like, hey, we're better than GPT-4 in like MMLU, or I'm not even sure if that's one of the correct acronyms of the 30 core
close
tests
enough
that people are throwing out there. And there's not, those are important. It's good to have some general set of benchmarks for different things that we're testing, but they're very general, and they're never going to tell you how good is this thing going to be for my specific use case. You're the only one who can answer that question,
right?
And it could be hard to answer it. So like going back to the search engine ranking algorithm, well, how do you do that? Well, it turns out you hire a bunch of people who are trained, often with a big manual on here's how we define relevance, which is already a pretty fuzzy subject, like how relevant is something to a given user's query.
Right.
And then you have them label the data. You look at a whole bunch of queries and results, and you have them on a scale of like 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, say how relevant a given result is for a query. And even then you're like, okay, well, the query could be ambiguous. It's hard to understand what a user's intent is when they query. These problems are very similar in the chat space, or having a user ask for something. And then when the ultimate result comes out, you need some way to measure, well, okay, did this satisfy the user's question? We see it, in ChatGPT itself. We can give a little thumbs up or a thumbs down. Most people probably don't interact in that right. way. When a user does, it's a really strong signal. Right, so you should probably incorporate that data back into your process and use it to make the model better. But yeah, I mean, the good news is companies have been working on this problem for 20 years. The bad news is every individual has like a slightly different definition of good for whatever they're doing. So there
Right.
isn't just this magic, I can buy this product and it's going to like solve this problem for me. What you need like really good tools to help you ask the question and solve the problem, which is, why we built Weights and Biases, and hope we can really help a lot of people put this rigorous process in place to be able to build a robust data science machine learning function.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Weights and Biases has helped me, you try to get this one metric, right? Like you try to get F1 score is above 0.8, right? But it doesn't really matter that much. Sometimes it's about how it's performing on different segments of your data. And I found that tables has helped me a lot. I've been able to look at different probability distributions for different classes, and also just to see where there's errors, and to sort of segment the data and then see, okay, in this particular type of conversation that I'm analyzing, this is what I want to be looking for. Okay, it helps me with error analysis basically, and to zoom in on those problems, because often, it's not just about one accuracy metric or one particular thing. You have to sort of have this ability to zoom in and zoom out, and that's one thing like Weights and Biases has really helped me with.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of confusion matrix of I'm making a model to predict whether or not you have COVID. If it false positives versus false negative, it's different for the use case. If I tell someone they have COVID and they don't actually have it, probably not as bad as me telling someone they don't have COVID when they actually have it.
Right.
So how do you want to optimize your model for these cases? What can you do to really prevent that, the case you don't want? Right. These broad, F1 score 80%, it means nothing. How many times am I going to be lying to my user about this thing that's really important?
Right. It's whenever the cost of errors aren't equal, and it's always that case, right? Because the cost of errors are never the same. So therefore, the metric can't just be this overall metric where you're treating true positives and false positives, or whatever, true negatives and whatever. All of your combinations in your confusion matrix, each box matters differently, and you have to be able to somehow incorporate that. And the only way you can really do that is by segmenting it.
Especially when you're iterating, maybe I moved F1 score from 80% to 90%. That's a no. Of course, let's ship that model. Well, wait. Look at those cases. Did the cases get better or worse? Because maybe overall you got better, but now you're way worse on the false positive or whatever case, and that's really important to know.
Right. Or you'll just get better at the majority class, and then you won't even ever detect the rarer class, and you'll think, oh, okay, yeah, my model's better. I know people just want to know, is model A better than model B? But there's always some trade-off. It's never. Very rarely do you ever get it across the board that one thing is better, categorically better than another model.
These models are going to get better. They're going to do more amazing things. It's an exciting time for us to be in. But as these models get generally better, this problem of all right, well, when it fails, knowing how it fails and doing everything we can to inform the user and protect against it is going to become even bigger, because we're going to start trusting these things more. We'll never get rid of hallucination because by definition of the way these things work. There's some weird corner case or something weird with the data that's going to be really bad. It's very important to understand that and do what we can to prevent users from having a bad experience because of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I know. I always find it so funny, companies say we have eliminated hallucinations. If you've said that, then don't trust that company, because they don't know what they're talking about. It's like eliminating bias. It's no, you have not eliminated bias. You can try to minimize it, but you cannot eliminate it. And if you think that you have, then you didn't really fully think through your problem.
Yeah.
So just looking at this space, and obviously the last year and a half has been this hype cycle, right? But you've been in this industry, since 2007. Were there any other big revolutionary step function things like this that really created such hype? Have you ever seen something like this, like ChatGPT has created?
Not to this level. This is astronomical. hype, and it like continues. I kind of thought like, all right, people will chill, but there's still like every conference I go to, every company I talk to, they're deploying a lot of resources to figure out how generative AI is going to change how they function, how the world functions. So this is definitely unlike anything I've ever experienced. I'd say the closest is maybe the hype around autonomous vehicles. Really, like when we first started Weights and Biases, it was clear that okay, deep learning was really starting to work. Like the things that the demos I was seeing, how good these models were getting at just taking in pixels and spitting out like what everything in that image was, or putting bounding boxes around important objects was. I remember seeing examples of it being like, wow, I did not think we'd be able to do this when we were able to do it.
Right.
And I think you saw, a ton of money go into a ton of different companies trying to make self-driving cars, and predictions of having a self-driving car before, well before we actually were able to have it. But, now I'm going around the streets of San Francisco and seeing the Waze cars drive by without someone in them, or taking rides in them, which is trippy. Like
you've been in it.
It's here. It took longer than any of us had hoped, but it's here.
You've taken one?
I think, yeah, a couple times. It's cool.
Creepy?
It's very cool. Yeah, definitely a little creepy. And I've seen it's gotten into situations. I love like writing in Waze, because you like see some situation and you'll be like, I want to get like a bag of popcorn and be like, what's it gonna do here? We've got like construction cones, and there's a homeless person doing something crazy. Let's like see. And I've always been pleasantly surprised.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's creepy. Are there steering wheels, or there's no steering wheel?
Yeah, there's a steering wheel. You can even sit in the driver's seat. Apparently you have to like keep your hands off of the. I haven't done that, but
yeah.
Every time I get in, usually in the back seat or something, and I'll take like a video, because I'm still, and you see the wheel turning and it's going, and
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I guess it works. It needs to stay within a certain area, though, right? It can't go outside of a certain area. Is that how it is?
It takes some weird routes.
Oh,
like
okay.
It's definitely like its route planner is not just like Google Maps.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they license it with the city, or if there's certain like no-go zones. But they also like the tech on those things is nuts. That is not a cheap vehicle to operate, and there's lots of lidars and all these things that Elon doesn't like. But turns out it makes the problem a lot more doable. But
yeah, take in whatever senses you need to take in to get that done. You don't have to have it be some all-knowing, omniscient sort of model. It can take in multiple senses. Yeah, that's cool. I need to look into it even more. I don't know if I would take it or not. I guess eventually that'll become commonplace. You do it enough, you'll be exposed to it. You'll stop taking stop taking
come on,
videos.
You guys, it's exciting, man. It's you should take it.
Yeah.
I'll come to San Francisco. I'll get you a ride in one.
I appreciate it. I would take a ride with you in a driverless car. I would do it. Very cool. So with all of this hype and everything that's happening in, let's say natural language processing, but really just like the machine learning world, how do you view the gap between the hype and the reality? So like what the promise is of all of this stuff, and then like where we actually are.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I'm surprised that we're still like peak hype from what I can see. So, we're gonna hit the trough of disillusionment at some point. This is the Gartner hype cycle.
Yep.
I think a big like this space moves so fast. Weights and Biases has been around 5 years. The amount of change, the transformer architecture, for instance, like wasn't a thing until 2017, and now that's basically the most popular architecture used in everything that from the self-driving cars to these language models. And I'm sure there'll be another architecture or changes to this architecture that prove to be even more fruitful. I think the speed is jarring, and then when you get these big enterprise companies figuring out how to use this new thing, they're slow. Like they're still, very much being cautious and figuring it out. We're just we're waiting for the number of transistors that NVIDIA can pack into their chips to go up, which it will. And then these models will get better. I saw, there was like an interview with Sam Altman saying like, a lot of people think like, oh, we'll get this like AGI, or even the couple weeks after ChatGPT blew up, everyone was like, oh my God, this is going to like change everything now. It takes time. It is the actual process of finding the killer use cases for this and making it a core part of what you're doing. It will take time. I think you look at like Y Combinator and the startups coming out of that now, like the majority are somehow connected to this space. What was the original question? What are the challenges going to be?
No, the gap between the hype and the reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is self-serving. One of the big gaps is just better tooling, like having visibility into how these things are performing and actually operationalizing it. I think that's the thing that's happened is you can use like GPT-4. It does these amazing things, but it's slow and it's expensive.
Yes.
At scale. So then people are, all right, well, yeah, we'll like take Llama 2 and like find, well, now you need to have a robust like MLOps process and practice to iterate on that model and understand its shortcomings and prevent all of these, safety related issues.
Right.
So, I think the gap now is like, there aren't a lot of push button managed solutions out there. Often the use cases of these things are so specialized and unique that you kind of need to build out some internal expertise. And everyone's just kind of figuring that out now. So I guess I'd expect all of this to get better. I guess I can't offer a win. It's as soon as possible. It's definitely what we're working on. But it's clear this is not going anywhere, and there's a ton of potential. Like I'm delighted by just like ChatGPT on a daily basis and thinking of ideas for how this could be applied to different processes within organizations.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really good brainstorm partner. You could give it some ideas. It could really helps out, and you can have a nice little back and forth. It generates very interesting ideas. And then you were touching upon another interesting thing, which was like the hardware that's involved with these systems. And obviously there's an NVIDIA, which is a huge player. And then, Google has their TPUs, and then there's like this new thing like LPU. It's very interesting to think that now there's hardware that's going to be designed specifically for these use cases. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, can whoever, those companies get the latency down to a point where you can actually make an API call, let's say. I guess there'll still be some challenges there, no matter what, as long as there's an API call involved. But if you're doing it, locally. You also made another really good point. It's like, I think people tend to, it's like a new idea, like a maximum viable product. They'll use ChatGPT to get like a really good version of something, and then thinking, then when we scale, we'll substitute it for Mistral or Llama or, some other model. But it's not that simple. It's not really as simple as a plug and play. So I guess along the same vein, what's an important question that you believe remains unanswered in machine learning?
We've been in the space long enough to see what's happening here, right? Like we played with GPT-2 We played with GPT-3. We thought these were cool. We were, telling our friends and family about it and having them try it.
Right.
It wasn't until the really instruction fine-tuned and ChatGPT stuff came out where it was like, whoa, this is really cool. But you also, the models had gotten better at that point. So you just, you can just plot that stuff out on a graph. Like year thing was made and how good it was. Like the main limiting factor is the speed and cost of the chips running these things. And all indications are they get better if we're able to throw more computing power at them. So it's a waiting game. We're just waiting essentially for Moore's law, which happens to be an exponentially increasing phenomenon for these models to get better. So the question to me is, all right, well, when does that just mean we get AGI, right? I mean, this is a big question for OpenAI. Could we just continue to scale this thing up and we have a model that's generally, however we want to define generally, more capable than humanity? That's a big unquestioned answer for me. It's something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
I think what's been really interesting in terms of unanswered, or what I think will probably be some of the most interesting stuff in the next couple of years, is all the multimodal work that's happening. So
yeah,
Gemini released their million token contact length, which means now we can just throw videos in there, and the stuff you can do with videos is pretty cool. Just in my own personal usage of ChatGPT, the image stuff has been amazing. I can take a picture of something I need transcribed or translated, or I want you to count calories in my refrigerator. It's very cool what you can do just by adding imagery. And then if we throw audio and video, the use cases, and then if we make it faster to get input and output into that thing, the use cases are boundless. So I think that's it's a long-winded way of saying the main problem here is just more compute that's cheaper.
Right. And
this is why NVIDIA stock is going to the moon,
through the roof. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's I saw it too. It's I knew it was going to happen. Should have gotten deeper into that. Anyway, speaking of AGI, what do you I think the thing, everyone has a different definition for it, right? Slightly, I think. Do you feel like you have a good definition for AGI, or
no? I don't have a good definition. What I want it to solve real science, solve some hairy problems that our best scientists can't solve. Then it's all right, it's here. It's
achievement unlocked. Yeah. It can do it. So that's some unsolved math problem, some new protein thing.
I mean, Google, they recently, had a model solve a proof that none of us could solve. So maybe it's here.
Yeah, but if you look into it, they had it do it 1,000 times, and then they had mathematicians review it, and they found oh, okay, a handful of times this actually worked. I think that, I don't know, that's what I was reading about. But yes, it's possible. It's possible.
No, I think it's really, yeah. I mean, a lot of people way smarter than me have spent a lot of time trying to define this, so I'm not going to even attempt it. But it's one of those things where you probably know it when you see it. I don't know. I think it's it's going to be remarkable and scary, but it seems and I'll also say there's a long history of the machine learning world kind of over-promising and under-delivering when it comes to this stuff. So I would not be surprised if it takes us longer than the next generation of GPT here. But I do think there's a reasonable likelihood that in my lifetime I get to see this, which is awesome. scary.
Yeah.
But I
Scary
mean, like,
for
wow,
sure.
like I managed to be put on this earth during a time when this evolved ape created this other thing that somehow surpassed. Like, it's a very special time to be alive, and to have the privilege to be a part of the space and kind of see it happen is, pretty remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the most exciting time to be in machine learning. Changing gears a tiny bit. So you kind of, you've been involved in, 2 successful machine learning companies. What does it take to sort of take part in something like entrepreneurship in a field like machine learning where there's so much uncertainty? What are some of the lessons that you've learned?
Well, I think lesson number 1, like, you have to love what you're doing, and specifically with like a startup, it's like, well, you need to love the people that you're selling software to, right? The people you're solving problems for. And for me, I mean, like, machine learning, the intelligence, the thoughtfulness, the kinds of problems that can be solved with it just made it something that I could get very passionate about and put a ton of energy into. There's a lot of, like, no one cares, especially in the beginning. Like, you're building this thing, you think it's cool, you care a lot, you go out, you share it with people, and like, most people really do not care. So you need to have grit to push through that, to stay positive, to continue putting one foot in front of the other every day. I think others have given that advice just around persistence and being able to keep trying. But yeah, I guess, for me, it's just like, the main thing is you can go to like a conference with your users and be energized. That would be like the main piece of advice. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard to keep going when you haven't necessarily found that product market fit or success in the space.
Right. How did you kind of like, did you know when you hit product market fit? Is it a feeling? Was there something that clicked where you had it, or it was just about having a certain number of users, a certain value that users were getting? I feel like that's something that's very hard. Like, a lot of startups struggle with understanding, like, have I reached product market fit?
Yeah. Well, there's like, first just getting users. So that's big, but there's a lot of things you can do on the internet, especially if you have millions of VC dollars, that give you a bunch of users that, aren't necessarily ones that will stick around or be all that valuable.
Right.
And Lucas and I have always approached entrepreneurship like as a small business that really needs to earn every dollar and just, make it work. So early on for us, it was, those initial conversations with your very first customers where you're going to go, all right, we want to like charge you for this software. You got to come up with a price. It's kind of a harrowing process, but then to see customers actually say, yes, we want to pay you this is valuable, and seeing them continue to engage with the product and it's probably like after a year of having paying customers and seeing that they actually renewed, that you're like, all right, well, there's clearly something here. But, even after getting those first couple of customers, it's like, we spent a lot of time with them. We like held their hands a ton. Is this scalable? Are we going to be able to find broader market fit here? There's a lot of doubt in those early days.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's not just about users. If you're creating a software product that like anyone can kind of use, because users can be, you can do anything. Anyone that's seen Silicon Valley, did you watch Silicon Valley?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but it's not just about getting users, it's about retention and actually have them continue to use it and being able to continue to see sort of, how they're using it. And yeah, pricing is always very tricky because it can't just be like however much they're willing to pay. You actually have to equate that value to something. So that must be very tricky. Any other lessons?
Well, in the beginning, though, it is kind of an exercise of like, how much do you want to pay?
Right.
I mean, you're trying to price this product that has no precedent in the market, and it's wild, but it is. You're kind of pulling numbers out of a hat.
Right.
I'd say the other piece on users, like an example with both Weights and Biases and CrowdFlower Figure 8, we engaged a lot with the academic community, and you're not monetizing that community. There's you might be able to get a university to pay a little bit for the software, but the amount of work and pain you're going to have to go through to get that done is a lot and not worth it. And then you might be able to get a handful of the academics to pay for the software, but the dollars are going to be really small, and they have pretty tight budgets and don't generally want to pay for software. But we always would invest in that community because we knew that if you're doing this work in academia, eventually you're gonna get a job in industry, and you'll want to use the tools that help you do your best work in academia and kind of hopefully bring us along. But the end goal of the business is always to close those larger deals with the various enterprises. So you've got to be really smart about how you do that. And there is some tension between all right, let's give as much of this away for free while also being able to monetize for industry. Right.
Because the value that you get from people using your software, figuring out what breaks, what doesn't break, what people are getting value from, that's invaluable. That's invaluable. But you also don't want to you can't just give it away you can't give it away forever, right? At some point, it's a business. There's a certain bottom line that you have to start, collecting some sort of fee. But it's very interesting. You mentioned sort of in the beginning, you were doing things that were more almost consultative. So when you were small, you were doing things that didn't necessarily scale. But did you know at the time that was sort of the case, and that in hopes that one day you'd be able to reach a point where it would?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it's just you're trying to get anyone who will engage to continue engaging. So that was priceless. Yes, the founders will drive down to Mountain View every week to meet with the team at Toyota. That's invaluable.
Right.
Now we can't keep doing that forever, but it was right for us to do it. And I think of it less as consultative is that's something as an entrepreneur you always need to be really careful with, because you don't want to make a consulting company that's building kind of bespoke things for different people where there isn't a central platform or service that can
right.
Have the benefits of scale across many, many, many different customers. So we were, working very closely and addressing specific problems that they were having, but always stepping back and saying hey, is this generally useful? Will this also be something that someone working in this other space could benefit from when deciding whether or not we actually productized it and put it into the product? At my previous company, CrowdFlower Figure 8, that was helping customers generate labeled data sets for their machine learning model efforts. That would often turn into actual consulting, which was really hard, where
right.
We're using our own software on behalf of the customer, or we're going deep into their specific use case and helping them design, and that makes for a very different business dynamic than just selling a software license.
Yeah, I think that's because getting annotated data is so much harder than people think it is, because it's not just get good data, right, what you were saying earlier, what does good mean, right? You need to create a set of annotation instructions, you need to create the tooling around it, and you actually have to know somehow if you're collecting it. And then often this task it won't even be objective, right? There'll be some subjective nature to it, and there'll be like this, low interannotator agreement. So how do you even measure if you're getting good data? So I'm sure there were so many challenges there, but yet such an important problem, such an important thing to try to solve, and way ahead of the game. Like that was back in 2007, 2008. I mean, thinking about the data-centric, movement that's taken place over the last few years, like you knew that a long time ago.
Yeah, we were definitely too early to market with that first company, but we learned a ton and got to work with a ton of really impressive machine learning teams over the years. So I wouldn't take it back, but
that's good. Yeah, I mean, you get to learn about some of the problems.
How well Scale has done, which started like 10 years after we started, and think like, if we had just timed our go-to-market a little differently. But no, they're awesome. They've executed amazingly.
Yeah, the timing of things, there is a certain, I never like using the term luck, but there is a certain luck to timing, especially for entrepreneurship. You have to be excited in developing this thing at the right time when other people are, where some amount of people are ready for it, at least, right? You need to have some customer base. I think that when it comes to creating SaaS in a tech company, you have a team filled with forward thinkers, and that's not necessarily who the buyer is, right? At a company, it might not necessarily be the most forward thinker. They might be a little bit more on the conservative side, not willing to take certain risks, and then you have to try to show them value, which can be really tough. Just thinking about some things and the challenges of entrepreneurship, but also that's what makes it fun. And then you combine it with machine learning, it makes it even more fun.
There you go.
So in your, career, well, first off, you've had some of the best titles, I have to say. Chief Awesome Officer at one point, just your name or your initials at another point, pretty cool. Any other really cool ones?
I think Chief Awesome Officer I just put on LinkedIn for fun.
Oh, okay.
But CAO, it's got a nice ring to it. Yeah.
It does have a nice ring to it.
CVP, that's my personal favorite because it's my initials. It could also mean Corporate Vice President.
Yep.
Titles it's a title. I suppose I like having a C title, but it doesn't, my title is co-founder, really, at the end of the day. And that's one of the things I love most about the job is that I'll get kind of brought into anything at any time and can be really versatile and just, try to solve problems pragmatically.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just about solving problems. So they get to bring you in to solve problems.
Fixer.
You're the fixer. Yeah. The closer, the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them. I'll give you this one. What's one piece of advice that you would give yourself or you wish you received 20 years ago? 15 years ago.
This is great. Yeah. Find a hobby.
Okay.
I think, and this is something I had, like other friends had told me, like, I should do this. And especially as an entrepreneur, it's always just like, well, there's not a lot of time. Like my hobby is this project. And I've definitely found that there's only so far that goes before you're just kind of burnt out. And now you're like worse off than if you had just spent your 10, 20 hours of free time last week doing something else that you're interested in or excited about. So
any hobbies that you want to share?
Have something exciting, interesting on the side. The sad part is I still don't have a great hobby.
So you wish that somebody gave you that advice, I guess.
That's exactly. That's like legit advice. Yeah. I mean, the regulars. I enjoy reading. I enjoy long walks. traveling, but I don't think any of those quite qualify as a hobby. I'm thinking I should go to the clay studio and throw some clay or go weld some metal together or something. But yeah,
I was gonna say something maybe in the art realm. Yeah. Okay, the final and the juiciest of questions. What has a career in machine learning and entrepreneurship taught you about life?
Oh man. Well, I'd say the entrepreneurship part has taught me that there's the business, there's this like idea, the customer, all of these things we think about when we think of the kinds of problems you're going to have to like deal with within a company. The thing that I never thought about that much, but is actually what I found to be the most important, is the people within the company that you're creating. Right? You're hiring a bunch of folks to work on a problem, but each of those individuals is another person with their own problems, own stuff going on, and the only way the organization is going to be effective is if the people within it feel respected and treated as humans with dignity, and you know, there's not like some magic formula of like, oh, this is what you do such that everyone in your company will now be seen as their full and true self. But I think it's something important, especially as an entrepreneur, as a leader in the company, to think about and to try to engage with as many people in the organization as human beings as possible. That's definitely a lesson. I think the other piece that I've learned in doing this over the years is that I could still find that joy, that happiness of imagining how to solve a problem and going out and solving it. That being a creator, that's one of the aspects of entrepreneurship that I love the most. And it's been just amazing, even over the last like 6 months, to go and experiment with these new language models and see what kind of just side projects and tools that I can create. And I still have that same joy I had like as a teenager when I made my first website, and that's been awesome, and just continuing to learn and to build.
That's awesome. I love it. For people that are interested in learning more about you or some of the work that you're doing at Weights and Biases, where would you direct them?
Well, W&B.com has information about the product itself and the company. There's also really cool links to different what we call reports in the Weights and Biases platform, which can be bits of research or analysis or leveraging some of the new large language model stuff we were talking about today. That's really good content. We have a YouTube channel, and we're on Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are our primary social media outlets. I'm on Twitter at Van Pelt. Ping me, hit me up. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing at Weights and Biases. Thanks for letting me pick your brain for a little bit.
You bet. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Learning from Machine Learning. On this episode, we delved into the experiences of Chris Van Pelt, co-founder of Weights and Biases, gaining valuable insights into the current landscape of the industry. Chris explained the pivotal role of Weights and Biases as a powerful developer tool, enabling ML engineers to navigate through the complexities of experimentation, data visualization, and model improvement. His candid reflections on the challenges in evaluating ML models and addressing the gap between AI hype and reality offered a profound understanding of the field's intricacies. Drawing from his entrepreneurial experiences, co-founding 2 machine learning companies, Chris leaves us with lessons in resilience, innovation, and a deep appreciation for the human dimension within the tech landscape. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, keep on learning.